Here is Brett McMurphy started out this morning with some of the stories that started to leak out about the Pac-12, whatever they're called. And there is a chance they would be getting teams from the Mountain West. McMurphy, the quadruplets, that the Pac-12 had quadruplets. There we are, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, Boise State. Now it's 6 members, along with Oregon State, Washington State, and then this quick note, and then we talk about it. The Pac-12, good morning. It's a beautiful new day. So they made it happen. There's still a lot of what does this mean? We'll get to that. Craig and Paul, your thoughts is realignment just kind of overnight had some fun.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's a really surprising type of thing that was just sort of out of nowhere. And it was crazy to see that, and crazy to see this all come together so quickly. And I got a lot of thoughts on it. I'm very excited for Boise State. I'm very excited for San Diego State and the teams out there that have been pining for an invite of some sort. I'm very excited for fans of the Pac-12 who wanted this conference to remain in, some surviving fashion, whatever that may look like. I'm excited for what could still come for them, because there's now tons of speculation about what might happen now after this, because they obviously have to add more teams, but where will those teams come from, and will they come from the ACC, and will there be, a Stanford reunion and a Cal reunion? And now that's all getting drummed up and talked about. And I'm excited that there's no more just kind of BSing on what the future holds, that we know that, hey, the Big 12 is not adding Oregon State and Washington State. The ACC is not adding Oregon State and Washington State. The next dominoes aren't Clemson jumping to the Big 12, or it's very clear that legal stuff is making this happen in some ways. And it's also preventing maybe what possibly could have happened down the line. It's rendering that moot, because everybody's kind of got to act now, it feels like, or at least from the Pac standpoint, it feels like they needed to act now and get something done with the future so uncertain, and not being able to say hey, we've got this guaranteed next summer or, next fall. We need to move. And they moved, and they moved swiftly. They moved with ninja-like qualities, and did something that they couldn't do in their history before now. And it's part of the reason why they ended up in the position they're in. They could have killed off the Big 12 and didn't do it, right, a couple of different times. And now they are, for all intents and purposes, probably killing off the Mountain West Conference to survive. So they became cutthroat, and there's just a lot to unpack from this, because it all happened. As much as we talked about the Pac and realignment and all that, this all happened very, very quickly.
Yeah, we're going to get into what the Mountain West is saying, also the possibility of other parts of this, the spider web of it. Paul Catalina, here's Dan Wetzel. The new Pac 8/10 6-pack currently will be those that we mentioned, contenders for the next 2 editions: UNLV, Utah State, New Mexico, Wyoming, Air Force. Here's what Dennis Dodd said. As he said, wait a minute, there's a few other options that could be a part of this too. And he lists some of those teams too. This is Dennis Dodd on what might happen next. And then Ross Dellinger with a checklist that he had of, okay, UNLV, look at what it says when it says Stanford and Cal, parentheses, no. But there are several different options of what they might do next. And what a day it's been.
Yeah, I think they've got to get to 8. Obviously, that's the goal. I don't think they're going to stop at 8 if they can, but they do have to get to at least 8. And one of the interesting things that comes into all this, one is the television revenue that they're going to get, which we'll talk about in a second, which Bob Thompson said. We'll get to that. But the other thing is, and we have Rich Clark, who's the CFP executive director today.
Yep.
And the question I'm going to ask him is, so what does this mean for the Pac in an automatic playoff spot? Can they get back into that, or are the other conferences going to say, no, there's the Power 4 and the Group of 6? I'm leaning more towards they're going to say it's the Power 4 and the Group of 6, because if they say, no, well, it's the Power 5 again, that's a spot that those 4 teams won't have. And that's all too valuable to them, especially to the SEC and Big Ten, who have been trying to corner the market on this as much as they can. Not to say that the Big 12 and ACC don't feel that same way, but if they have to give another automatic spot to somebody, then that changes things. Stanford and Cal might be having a little bit of buyer's remorse, but and no offense to these schools at all, but they look down on schools like this. Stanford looks down on this. Like they made the move to the ACC because the ACC has Duke and Virginia and North Carolina and like-minded, Georgia Tech, some like-minded schools in there, Boston College, as opposed to, San Diego State, Fresno State, Boise State, Colorado State. A lot of those are ag schools. A lot of them are in rural places, and that's not really who Stanford and Cal want to play with. Look, they didn't want to play with people in Texas, and we're not all rural, but it feels like the people in San Francisco kind of thought, well, the Texas is full of bumpkins, and they didn't want that. So I doubt that they're going to want to go back. Although, if they just get tired of traveling, maybe they do.
Well, we will have Jeremiah Dickey, who's the director of athletics at Boise State, with us. You mentioned Rich Clark, the college football playoff executive director. He will join us today. We also have Sam Kahn and Max Olson. Craig's off the radar. Paul's top five, and Mickey Spagnola on the Cowboys in the NFL. So here's a note from Boise State this morning when all this came down. What's next? It's one of those schools you hear about. And then you think about Memphis and USF and, of course, how much they would love to be. And this is not a power conference, but they can maybe get to that point. We will see. The Mountain West Conference released this statement. Aware of media reports regarding potential departure, we again have a lot more days ahead. The requirements of the schedule agreement will apply to the Pac-12. Should they admit Mountain West members, our board of directors will meet and determine what is our next step. And then on top of that, the Mountain West officials, Ross Dellinger with this, they will freeze conference revenue distribution for the four Mountain West schools that are Mountain West Conference schools that are leaving as part of what is the exit fee. The revenue would be used towards whatever their exit fees will be. Busy day. Busy day. I'm happy in a way for Oregon State, Washington State. This is not what they actually wanted, but this is what was the next move. Happy for them. And here's one note from Bob Thompson on what all this might mean. The Pac-12 jumps first in line, the collegiate TV deal front. For a number of reasons, their games will be of value to outlets. ESPN might want more West Coast games for a launch of their DTC content and product. TNT needs content. Fox and CBS split the current Mountain West package. Let the dance begin. Streamers will kick the tires. CW probably wants to stay in the game. Question on the minds of TV folks will be, is this the Mountain West Conference Plus, or is this the Pac-12 Light?
I don't know what the difference between those two things would be. I mean, I guess the Pac-12 Light would be better.
Well, they're called the Pac-12 for one,
yeah,
so that would be that more power to the Pac-12.
Yeah,
you think?
But there's a lot. Again, there's a lot to kind of unpack with all this. But how the other conferences view it's a big thing. How fast can they move? How viable the conference is? How far east that they go? Because if they go to Tulane or something like that, that's going to be a thing. Tulane, Memphis, anywhere east of or right at the Mississippi. I don't know how much further they want to go than that. Do they try to get into Texas? Do they?
Oh, no. That is absolutely possibly on the table, whether it's UTSA or who it might be. I don't know. Texas State. Is it somebody from the state of Texas? That has been brought up too.
Look, man, if it's just Oregon State and Washington State adding Tulane and UTSA, it's a G5. I mean, that's what it is. It's not a power conference. Now, if they were to go add Stanford and Cal back, which Ross Dellinger says isn't happening, right? Then, I mean, it is what it is. And I don't say that disparagingly, but it's just reality. I mean, you were the Pac-2. You've made a great move to reinvigorate that conference, to keep it alive, to keep all of the IP and the network stuff and everything that came with getting the last laugh after the departures of all of the other Pac schools when they separated and basically left you for dead. And to your credit, you had this big pile of cash and camera equipment and all these things that came with being the last in the room that you had to play with and to use to try and come up with the best case scenario for your future. And I think, like Paul said, there's a lot to unpack from this because it all happened just so quickly and there's so many different details to it. But I think that, again, that with all the stuff kind of floating around, it feels like this was a move they were inclined to make and to make quickly. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that as we hear from, the commissioner and we get into all the details and the official introductions and those types of things. But I think that, they made a logical choice in trying to reform the conference and make it very West Coast heavy, but it also makes a ton of sense to now spread your wings and go get some Texas schools and go add whoever else may be out there of interest, like a Tulane or someone along those lines. But yeah, if you're adding those schools, you're not a power conference. And I say that as somebody who has no problem with using that label, but I'm going to tell you right now, the power conferences aren't going to say that you're a power conference. So you're not going to get those voting rights and autonomy that those others have, because I just don't feel like we're expanding, we're consolidating. So I don't think everybody's going to go from, hey, it's now a P4 to like, let's go back to a Power 5. And now we're adding teams. We're adding more and more. That doesn't feel like the direction this thing's going. So I think they're not a power conference, but they are the best of the G5. That's probably what you're going to be in the running for, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Is the college football playoff, and Rich Clark will join us at 425, is it the 5 highest rated conference champions, but 4 of them are the Autonomy 4 conferences?
That's not the language. It's the 5 highest rated conference champions.
Right. Okay.
But we know who makes the ratings, though. Like the people on that committee make the ratings. It's not the 5 highest rated conference champions from the AP and coaches polls. It's the 5 highest rated conference champions from this room of people who makes the rankings.
Those conference champions are decided on the field.
Yeah, but I mean, but the 5 highest rated conference champions,
they're top.
So it doesn't guarantee, so it's going to be, yes, the 5 highest rated conference champions. Well, 4 of them, we know who those 4 of those are going to be. So it's not like one year the AAC and the Pac-12 are going to knock out the ACC as long as that exists. So as long as those 4 conferences exist, they're always going to be the 4 highest rated, unless their conference champion is just absolute hot garbage, which I don't like. That's a very rare scenario you have to play out mathematically through a million simulations. The way it'll work is, yes, they can still get in, but they're going to get in like the Mountain West champion would have to get in this year, or the AAC champion would have to get in this year. They're going to be, 6 conferences vying for 1 spot and not 6 conferences vying for 5 spots.
It's been an interesting and fun day. Happy for those schools that have a chance. Jeremiah Dickey is going to join us today at 4:45. He was going to be on with us at 5, but he has a radio station in Boise, so he'll be at 4:45. Craig's off the radar right after that. And then again, Rich Clark, Max Olson, Sam Kahn, quite a bit to get to. And I don't really know how this works out, but I'm happy that conference, you know what, the Pac-12, it's not going to die, baby. It's going to I don't know if it's Pac-12, whoever the 12 or 10 or 8 are going to be, but you have to have 8. You have to have 8 to be considered a team that is in the college football playoff as a conference champion.
Yeah, so I mean they've survived, and that wasn't likely when this was all going down last summer. Although we knew that it was going to hang on for at least a couple of years, and that led to a lot of speculation, a lot of just throwing ideas out there. And now we know I think sooner than we expected, which I'm thankful for, because we can kind of move on from the speculation bubble about what happens with the assets and what happens with the Pac name and what happens with these two and where do they go, and every scenario thrown under the sun was reported on or speculated upon. This one was, to some extent, reforming the Pac was always one of those ideas. I just don't think it was the top of the list of the wants for fans out there. They wanted to be in a power conference. So they were hoping for a Big 12 invite or a ACC invite. The SEC and Big 10 were never going to come calling. No. But the other two, there was reason to believe that maybe they would at some point in time. And so, that's not going to be the case, but I think it's great to have some clarity for everybody involved. I think it's great to have this new opportunity for a Boise State who's been pining for a selection in the the big leagues, so to speak, in the power conferences. Now, again, is this going to be looked at as a power conference? I don't know. I don't think so, but it is a step up for Boise State still. It's a step up for San Diego State. It's a step up for all of these schools. And I think that's a really cool thing to celebrate. I mean, whoever thought that Boise State or San Diego State would be in the Pac-12? We thought they were very close at times, but now they are. It's not quite what you expected it to be when you wanted to be in it, but it is a step up, and it is a new world. And I think it's an exciting new world for all the schools involved. Like, sure, there's going to be some disappointment, but I do think there's an element of excitement to this, and there's an element of regionality and just kind of going in the opposite direction of the way conferences are going, that a lot of people can wrap their arms around, of like, oh, imagine that, a school that's geographically aligned with other schools that are geographically aligned and all are kind of on the same wavelength. We've gone away from that, and now we're returning to that in some ways with this new pack. So we'll see where it takes us. Obviously, they're going to spread their wings further. They have to by at least 2 schools here in the next couple of years. But there's a lot of candidates. So Tulane and UTSA and everybody else that's going to get mentioned here. It's now about to ramp up in a major way for you. So this is exciting, also nerve-wracking, but I'm glad that the Pac to the Big 12 thing is settled. And
remember some people called us out because we kept saying Oregon State, that's not going to happen. And there were some that kind of kept beating that drum, and here we are. We knew that anyway, but now it's official.
Yeah, this time a year ago, after the Big 12 had just added a bunch of Pac schools, I said that it doesn't make any sense. Why? Because immediately the conversation turned to Oregon State, Washington State, like 2 days after the Pac died, basically. And so my whole thing was, they're not joining right now, but there was a push, in terms of, I guess, just stories being put out there that presented that a little bit differently, as though it was something that was about to happen. Never made sense, because if it was going to happen, why would it not have happened when these other 4 just joined? And so I pushed back against that. And I've had a couple of times where that's been brought back up. But here we are, and it's a year later, and they are not in the Big 12. They are reforming the Pac-12. So there's the end of that story for at least right now. And I'm glad that everybody can just kind of look at the next thing, whatever that is. But I don't know. I felt pretty good about it then, and I feel great about it now.
All right. So there we are with all of that.